Norway's capital, Oslo, the fjord city, has ventured in on a major transformation of its harbor areas. The main objective of this process is to reclaim the waterfront for recreational, cultural, residential, and commercial purposes.
Architecture in an iconic way today does change urban experiences. A lot of the situation that you're dealing with when you visit cities is to do with architecture, and it's to do with the memory of this architecture and how you experience it after you've been there, the possibility of talking about it, explaining it, which is part of the urban myth development.
We are making a new city in Oslo. We take the port areas and transform it into apartments, business areas, and cultural institutions. Behind me here, we will build a new national museum, and on the other side we have a new opera, and we will build a new monk museum, and we will open the city to the fjord to make it possible for people to have access to the wonderful Oslo fjord.
Red is the color of love. Red is the color of love. Lonely love and red hot love.
A main characteristic of Oslo is also the points of land that stick into the fjord, like points of departure into the sea landscape. And now we are talking about a national axis of culture running from the Park of the Middle Ages, where we hope the University of Oslo also will locate a museum for the university in this area. And on the eastern side of the Akerselva River, we will reconstruct a new monk museum. On the other side of the river, we will have the new public library of Deichman. And then, of course, we are very happy already to have the National Opera and Ballet located and designed by Snøhetta in this area.
The main idea of the project, the Opera House, in the setting of the harbour situation in Oslo, is to transform a site which was closed to the public into an opera house, which doesn't close it even further to the public, but again opens it and gives the site back to the inhabitants of Oslo and Norway.
The project will basically develop a central area of Oslo by realigning the existing motorway, which goes along the surface, along the fjord, down into a tunnel. We had certain choices to connect up these existing tunnels, either a bridge, an immersed tunnel, or a rock tunnel. A bridge would, naturally enough, block out the fjord and dominate the area. A rock tunnel would be very, very deep, because the depth to rock in this area is 50, 60 meters. So the immersed tunnel was a natural solution to solve this problem. Basically, when the tunnel is completed, it will be underneath the existing seabed.
We're now standing approximately 20 meters below the sea level on the joint, the element joint between element number 4 and 5. So we have from here about 300 meters of tunnel in both directions. We're standing here on the joint. When the elements were immersed, there were bulkheads on either side. These bulkheads have been removed, and we're now completing the structural concrete in the joint section all the way around the section.
We expect to find certain archaeological artifacts, because Oslo is 1,000 years old, and we hope to find interesting things. We have found interesting things. We expect to find things maybe from the Viking period.
The most important part of the artifacts are the Viking ships. It's right here under the hills of Ekeberg. We are planning to locate the museum, and our goal is to be able to display the artifacts right here in a medieval context.
Crazy and red. Red is the color of love. Red is the color.
One very important issue with the Opera House is that it actually falls into the water level. It actually dives into the water, which means you actually withdraw from the normal barrier between horizontal urban grounds and the water level. So the building will hopefully enhance the use of water in a very close and intimate relationship between land and water.
I'm representing the company Lundhagen Architects, who together with the architects of Atelier Oslo won this competition for the new library in Oslo, which we are very, very proud of, and we think this can be a very, very good building. When we turned in our project, we called it Diagonale. The diagonal street in our city plan will give a much better traffic lines for the people walking in the area, and we also think about diagonal views inside the library, diagonal light coming from the ceiling and going all the way through the library in 4 directions, making light going through the building, but also make it possible to have contact between people inside the library and people walking out in the streets. And this is very important for a public building like a library, that all people are kind of get curious about what's inside and get invited into this building.
Whether the opera is expressed in an architectural form or not is a very, very difficult way of defining architecture, because it actually means that it would have to be analog in a sense. And our architecture is not analog in that sense. It actually operates more with the feeling that it generates within a performance, for instance. So it doesn't mean that forms or other elements are directly related to translation of opera music. However, I have to say the cladding, for instance, on the roof of the opera house is marble, and marble is the only stone that actually has a sound. When you hit it with a hammer, it sort of goes very beautifully, and all other stones are very plump. They don't have any sound, they don't have music. In that sense, you combine a very long-standing tradition of opera music into a modern shape.
In the years to come, a string of new enterprises, housing provisions, and cultural activities will open up the waterfront and provide for new and improved living conditions for Oslo's inhabitants.
Red is